systemic injustice. Mr. Parry was wronged in this way. His potential foreclosed by a system that saw race as a measure of worth, that denied him access to the scientific community of which he rightfully should have been part of. Today we name that injustice, and in naming it, we open the possibility for repair. This lecture, conceptualized by the Lukoff alumni and hosted by the theology faculty in collaboration with the Center for the Advancement of Social Impact and Transformation and the Faculty of Science, is one such act of repair. It is an act of memory, of justice, and of scholarly integrity. We are here to correct omissions, to honor brilliance where it was deliberately erased. Walter Parry is not only a symbol of individual excellence, he is also emblematic of a generation of educators and learners from the Vlakte and beyond, whose futures were violently interrupted. Their stories remind us that apartheid did not only and simply displace bodies, it distorted knowledge systems, erased local genius, and interrupted educational genealogies. In the words of Professor Chris Brink, former rector and vice-chancellor of Stellenbosch University, cited in Ons Bloed by Hilton Biscom, he says, Stellenbosch is to this day a divided town. There's the white Stellenbosch of Mosterdrift in die Boord, there's the brown Stellenbosch of Kloetiswil in die Vlei, and there's the black Stellenbosch of Kayamandi in die Brug. But before all of this, at one time, there was die Vlakte. There was a community where racial divides were less stark and that in embryo form already represented the type of community we strive for in this country today. That embryonic vision was violently suppressed, but it lives on not only in the stories passed down through generations, but also in initiatives like this memorial lecture, which seeks to make public the historical wounds inflicted by apartheid in order to invite restitution and repair. To become a truly reparative institution, a university must do more than transform policies and rename buildings. It must engage in what Chobani Mangani terms psychological repair, which requires not only the reconstitution of the self, but also the reparation of the social fabric that has been worn by violence, racism, and dispossession. The endeavor towards psychological and social repair is also our academic responsibility. The Lukoff Restitution Initiative, chaired by Professor Koopman in collaboration with various community partners, some who is here with us today, is an exemplar of such responsibility. By focusing on education as a form of repair, we acknowledge the damage of apartheid was not only infrastructural or material, but also deeply intellectual and psychological. Repairing what damage requires us to co-create knowledge with communities who were previously excluded, not as a gesture of charity, but as a matter of justice. This initiative, through Education as Repair, represents a transformative initiative by Stellenbosch University and our community partners to embody these values. It seeks not just to remember, but to act, to build bridges between past and future through a restitution statement grounded in holistic education, community empowerment, and institutional accountability. The transformation we seek is not cosmetic. It is, as Sarah Ahmed puts it, chipping away at the structures that uphold racism, sexism, and power abuses, a big brick by brick dismantling of those structures that inhibit true inclusion. Through sustained initiatives like this one, grounded in memory, built on partnerships, and orientated towards justice. We honor Walter Parry not only by remembering his name, but by building the future he was denied. Dominee Simon Adams, very happy that you were here. I'm quoting you, don't get up yet. He cautions us, and when he says in Ons Bloed, dit is my hoop dat Kayamandi, Kloetiswil, Idas Vallei en die Boord en andere se geskiedenis sal volg, sodat ons nageslag nie met 'n verdraaide geskiedenis mislei sal word nie. Terwyl ons lewende biblioteke steeds toeganklik is, moet ons die pas aangee in die voltooiing van die geskiedenis van Stellenbosch. As we gather in the spirit of remembrance, justice, and institutional accountability, it is only fitting that we acknowledge both the strides taken and the road that lies ahead. Stellenbosch University has taken commendable steps in recognizing its complicity in the injustices of apartheid, most notably through the recognizing to valuing its 2028 restitution statement, 2018, a formal apology to the communities of die Vlakte, and initiatives such as the Walter Parry Memorial Lecture, the Lukoff Restitution Initiative, and community engagement educational partnerships. These actions signal a shift from a symbolic rhetoric to tangible reparative practice. They are critical first steps in repositioning the university not only as a site of knowledge production, but as an ethical stakeholder in South Africa's unfinished journey of redress. However, as many decolonial scholars remind us, restitution is not an event. It is a long, recursive process that must be continually reimagined and co-constructed. The work of transformation cannot be reduced to policy compliance or the occasional commemorative gesture. It demands a sustained epistemological reckoning with the structures, cultures, and pedagogies that continue to marginalize and exclude. The memory of Walter Perry, his brilliance foreclosed, his aspirations denied, reminds us that the legacy of apartheid is not only material but deeply intellectual. It reminds us that the exclusion from knowledge systems is as violent as the physical displacement. To honor his legacy fully, we must build an academy that no longer treats intellectual inclusion as exceptional, but as foundational. This requires us to listen deeply to the living archives among us, the teachers, the elders, the displaced, and the alumni, whose stories and wisdom continue to illuminate the silences in our institutional memory. Yet the work of repair is far from complete. There are still wounds unacknowledged, partnerships yet to be forged, and barriers that continue to inhibit true belonging within the walls of our universities. In closing, as we honor the memory of Walter Perry and the community of the Vlakte and communities beyond, we do so not with renewed resolve, but build an academy that is expansive enough to hold multiple truths, humble enough to admit its failures, and courageous enough to pursue justice brick by brick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renee, for setting the scene. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Leslie van Rooy, the Senior Director, currently Student Affairs, but also for the Center, in the Center for the Advancement of Social Impact and Transformation. A warm welcome to you as well. Dear friends, we are now going to watch a short video of last year, in a sense capturing last year's memorial lecture, but then also in a sense also telling a bit about the story of where we're coming from and in a sense where we want to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a great honor and a privilege to welcome you to this memorial lecture as we gather celebrate the legacy of late Walter Perry.
We seek to honor those who were never recognized for their achievements, and there are plenty of them.
And so today we are actually rewriting history. It is a very important, poignant moment in the history of Stellenbosch.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here to get the acknowledgement after so many years that the man really did a lot for education.
This ripple effect that Walter Perry left affected me, and I only realized that tonight when it was put into that context.
This lecture, conceptualized by the Look of Alumni, is supported by the Look of Living Museum think tank, focusing on memorialization of the lives of those who lived and engaged in and with the Vlakte.
Tonight has been a moving experience. I will tell you why. Because Lukhof High School is my alma mater.
Many of you, especially our younger generation who's available here tonight on this audience, probably have never heard of Mr. Walter Hazen Perry. And this gathering gives us a chance to put the matter straight. Who was this man? To my mind, he was a scientific genius. He was born in Hanover Street in District 6.
Want dit is by ons ingedring by meneer Perry. Jy moet jou werk ken, as jy daar staan, moet jy nie kom soek wat er lesse moet gedoen word nie. Jy moet kan praat soos hy. En dit het ek tot vandag toe ek was 39 jaar in die onderwys, tot ek vir 4 jaar vir die Universiteit van Stellenbosch gewerk het as 'n onderwyseres. En dit is my, en ek het by hierdie goed bywoon, en er word so baie vertel van wat meneer Perry gedoen het. Toe kom al die herinneringe terug, en ek sien hom net soos hy in die klas kom, en sy stemmetjie, en sy kort stappie met die vinnige beentjies, het ek vir ons geleer. maar dit sal ek, hy sal altyd in my lewe bly. Want dit is meneer Perry, daar is nog nooit so 'n mens op in ons skool gewees nie. Net meneer Perry, Walter Perry.
For him, the most important material in the world for him was the mind of a child, and that he really invested soundly. Cross-pollination of knowledge is very imperative. I can learn from you and you can learn from me, and together we can transpire something excellent for the scientific spectrum. Walter Perry have done that for University of Stellenbosch and also for UCT and also for the global world.
But it was very emotional for me to experience once again this wonderful, talented man's legacy. And we hope that the university will take this further and bring more glory and honor to his name.
And this evening for me, to have heard so much about him, being of a different generation, I just feel so good about my alma mater. And I, as a teacher also there for 37 years, am just hoping that what happened here this evening will inspire the generations to come, because that is what it's all about. Everybody that's passed on must be an inspiration, so that everybody can know that Lukhof High is still the school it was back. It started in 1935.
Moral and ethical rectitude of transformation must never be open to question.
Walter Perry's story and what he could have contributed to South Africa, our country, must be unearthed.
It will be absolutely regrettable if we don't allow the legacies and the stories, Stan, of those that came before us to ignite, empower, excite and inspire all of us to make sure that in and for generations to come, we build and we continue and add on to the stories on the legacies. And that, I think, is what Walter Perry's story and what's been shared here this evening will continue to remind us.
Today we celebrate and commemorate the legacy of an amazing hero within our community in Stellenbosch. This university has truly become a community of inclusivity, where we welcome not only those who have grown up in Stellenbosch, but we are really truly opening up to the world to give our young people the opportunity to really become the best representation of themselves.
Colleagues and friends, good evening. I hope that you're warm. At least it's not raining tonight, so I know nobody is. It is cold in here. Can we just make the aircon colder, please? No. We just turn the aircon down. Colleagues, you will notice, colleagues and friends, welcome. I will not go through the entire welcome process again. You saw, as soon as that video was done, I ran to the podium because I was scared somebody's going to read my biography and my CV as well. And that is not what tonight is about. Tonight is about us having transformative discussions, but important and difficult discussions. So before I start, I'm going to read you a list of names, and then you tell me what the link is between these names. Mary Anning, Abu Nazar Al-Farabi, Al-Batani, Niels Bohr, Sophie Brahe, Florence Nightingale, C.V. Raman, Erwin Schrödinger, George Washington Carver, and S. Chandrasekhar. What does that have in common? Except the the colleagues from Stellenbosch University. What does that have in common? These are scientists. These are scientists that made a huge impact globally. We don't recognize all of those names. So some of these have never been recognized for what they've done. Some of these names go back to the 700s. People who have impacted mathematics, people who have impacted history. So they've been forgotten as well. What else link all of these people? Can't be gender, can't be race. What else is linking all of these people? All of them have a religious faith. You might have asked, why in heaven's name, see what I did there? How in heaven's name are we at an event that is co-hosted by theology and science? And this is something that I think is extremely important for us. Give me 2 seconds, please. Very often when we think of theology as religion and we think of science, very often they're seen as these two opposing things. Historically, that has never been. If you look at those names, very often the religious leaders were also the scientific thinkers and the scientific advances of the field. So when Reggie first mentioned this co-hosting to me last year, I did not even think more than 5 seconds about this. Because if you really think about it, what is science about? It's the search for meaning of life. It's the search for where do we come from. It's the search for how do we impact society. It is really those deep life questions. What is theology about? Exactly the same questions. Is everybody okay outside? No problem. This is meant to be a family event, so we will be as informal as possible. And if we have to stop to allow our friends and colleagues in, we'll do so.
Panel members can come and sit here. Then it will just open up some space for people. We're not going to read all your bios.
Yeah. So colleagues and friends, if you really think about this, and if we look at what theology is about and what science is about, we can see that both of these really has the potential to shape human experience, and both of these disciplines hold an immense potential to contribute to a more just and humane society, something that we have lost, I think. No, that's fine. Welcome. So as we gather in this space, let us be reminded tonight that universities do not only produce knowledge. Universities are also the stewards of memory, dialogue, and transformation. That's what I heard tonight, that we are still living libraries. I like that phrase, living libraries. In that spirit, tonight's dialogue offers a unique opportunity to reflect on how scientific and theological thinking can intersect to address pressing moral, social, and existential questions of time. So let us listen tonight, let us challenge and learn together as we honor Walter Perry's legacy through thoughtful engagement and shared purpose. Two things from the video that I've just made notes of that stuck with me. The recognition that Walter Perry did not receive. And if you look at that names, not everybody in that list received the recognition as well. And now, for many of them, 2, 3, 4, 500, some of them 900 years later, the recognition is there. With this second series in the annual series, we're not waiting 200 years, we're not waiting 900 years. We're celebrating that legacy. And then the other point that stuck to me was cross-pollination. This is what this is about. Theology and science coming together tonight and having a conversation. I'm not going to read out the bios of the panel members. You can see it's a huge panel. I can assure you all are slim mense, and we're going to hear some interesting thoughts tonight. I will introduce the speaker very quickly after I've posed the question. The program director, I have not warned you I'm going to do this. Tonight is about exploring how these two disciplines can impact community. One of the questions that we've shared, we asked the panelists to think about was, how do we work together? How do we ensure that universities, Stellenbosch University, does not just go into communities, get the information from there and leave? It's a two-way learning street, and it should be. And in the spirit of that, I'm going to pause at one point and open the floor to questions from our esteemed colleagues in the audience, and then I will allow the panel to answer one or two questions, and then we can go back to the questions that we've shared. You can scream at me afterwards, but I would like all of us to be involved with this. Thank you. So colleagues, as we start, I told Reggie, what Reggie forgot to say, I'm really loud now. What Reggie forgot to say, when I went up to him, I said, Reggie, please do not preach. Looks like a pulpit. But he forgot to say that I also said, keep the words small. I'm a scientist. I'm a very simple man. So I'm going to ask the panel members as well. We know that you are very clever, intellectual, stalwarts. We're going to keep it simple, please. So we maybe start with Sean. What does this mean tonight with this Walter Perry Memorial, the second one, annual the series? When you see what this topic tonight is about, the social justice, social impact, this engagement between the two, you were scientists, what does that mean for you?
So I think firstly, if I had to stand in Walter Perry's shoes, I didn't know him personally. I know the stories via my parents, their generation, people I've interacted with. I think we would have felt very proud in this moment. Because I think in the first lecture we mentioned the ripple effect. And that ripple effect affects other people. It affects others, which allows that legacy which was started many years ago, more than 100 years ago, I think. Not less. To also resonate with others. So when I scan across this audience, I'm seeing the next generation who's been influenced by Walter Perry. Not only as a brilliant and passionate scientist and mathematician, but also a parent in a sense to many of you who are sitting here. It's taken up that opportunity to instill in you a seed which was actually also passed on to people like me who have had the opportunity to come to this amazing institution and actually make Highlands Valley, Plutersville, Kaimani community part of this Stellenbosch University. We tend to also forget that it's not only the academics, these so-called clever people, is important to this institution. We need to also honor the role which this university has played in providing jobs to people. Opportunity for people to also engage as we are engaging, as a community, a broader community, to learn from each other. And I'm a physicist, so there's this famous law that we teach our first years called Newton's third law, which says that, you know, any interaction between two objects affects both. So when I stretch out my hand to my colleague next door, she is being touched by me, but I'm also touching her. And so we all affect each other in one way or the other. So that, Professor Fielding, that's my reflection on that. Thank you.
Maybe just introduce yourself.
Okay, good evening to the family and friends of Walter Perry, late Walter Perry, and the students of Stellenbosch, Scotland colleagues, Stellenbosch University. I think for me, what's important about tonight is the opportunity to sit here as a woman of color and a emerging researcher in science, having that opportunity to be included in this kind of conversation, I think is something that wouldn't have happened in the apartheid era. These are the things that we were limited from, right? Just coming into tonight, I reflected on how far I've come in my academic journey, and I mean, if I look at my parents, a lot of our parents, a lot of us are probably the first to have attained degrees and afforded the opportunity to attend universities, and I'm one such person. And so to sit here and to feel included in a university like Stellenbosch University means that we have made a lot of strides in the country, and that is something that Walter Perry would appreciate today. And the fact that we can sit here, theologians and scientists, and share knowledge, interdisciplinary perspectives, I think that is something Walter Perry would be pleased with. And also the fact that we're building on his legacy of sharing knowledge and affecting change and wanting one common goal, which is social impact. I think that is something that we would be pleased with. It's something that I'm pleased about.
My name is Hans Tabellange. I'm so grateful to be here. It's an absolute pleasure. For me, being here at the Walter Perry Memorial Lecture, I'm just reminded of all the Walter Perrys in my life. People that had a passion that spilled over into the lives of other people, having an effect on the way that people are shaped and made. So I'm just so grateful to be here for figures like Walter Perry. I did not know him personally, and I must confess, before the invitation, I hadn't heard of him. But having been here, having watched the video, I am so glad to be here and joining the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Domain Solomons, and I'm a theologian. I think what comes to mind immediately is the issue around access. Access to opportunities. I think we come from communities where there is, I always say, we always talk about talent, but if you go to many of our communities, there's ample talent. We don't have a talent problem, we've got an access problem. And I think to a large extent, Perry is a good example of that. Theology, why is theology important in that respect? I think, it's very difficult to divorce our disciplines or what we do from who we are. Again, faith and science, faith and society, I think is crucial in terms of, highlighting perhaps some of our shortcomings, some of our blind spots, and also what we need to be working towards in terms of creating the egalitarian society that we long for. Walter Perry for me is, a brilliant example of, someone who, like the Al-Farabis, the scientists that referred to earlier on, who, through diligence, through hard work, through creativity, today we are happy to be able to have this opportunity to celebrate his legacy, and also in the midst of, many of the people who had, direct contact with him. So I think in that sense, like Hans, I think, how many other Walter Perrys are out there, and I think it's up to us to be telling these stories, going forward, and also, of course, be encouraged through that and inspired, by using these examples. So once again, thank you for the invitation, and it's good being here, and I'm looking forward to further conversation. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Aslam. I'm from the Faculty of Education. The community that I've gathered here tonight, and the conversation that we're having about under-recognized figure, Walter Perry, must be constituted by the spirit that moves amongst us. I feel that spirit. What is that spirit? Walter Perry was a man of science, but he was killed by science. He was killed by the conceit of science. The conceit of science is based on the God of rigor and certainty. In other words, if you can't prove that something exists, then it cannot exist. That is, in a sense, the antithesis of the spirit that moves us tonight. And that spirit, over 400 years of an indigenous history, has been killed by institutional scientific structures that have created a big word, a positivist separation. Let me explain. The idea that my humanity is separate from scientific understanding. That's the conceit. The idea that apartheid was founded on the science of difference, not the humanity of difference. The idea that God is dead. The question is, how do we bring God back into this equation? In the context in which the Jewish historian, philosopher Yuval Harari has argued that in fact Homo sapiens has been superseded by Homo Deus, that human beings have been outsourced by a machine.
Goedenavond vrienden, ik is Sherry uit Winnes en ik het het probleem nou. De vorige spreker was mijn docent geweest.
Niks puntje vanavond.
Eerst is het al zijn probleem. Dan is die Adams die zo. Stel alles door hierin. En dan is het een paar grote namen die geworden wat zo kritisch mee nog aankijkt vandaag. Maar ik wil zeggen dat onderzoek is het ook niet. Ik heb een paar plekken getoerd aan die land al. Want ik weet niet waarom niet, Ossie, Safi is zijn naam. Hij heeft altijd gebruikt als voorbeeld waar hij Ossie gegaan. Omdat ik het een heel moeilijke tijd beleef in mijn leven, op zeker staan. En ongeacht dit, het ik vastgehouden aan die gezegde wat sê, the problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude towards the problem. En ik heb vastgehouden aan daardie gezegde en dit het vir my gebring waar ek vandag is. As ek dit sê, dan doen ek het vanaand omdat ek glo dat ons koms vanaand met Walter Perry wat vanaand hier is, sou sê, wat soek julle so? Hoe is julle mekaar? Gaan en doen die goed wat julle moet doen, man. Gaan maak seker dat so justice plaatsvind. Moenie kom sit die vergaderingkie so nie. Omdat ek ken toevallig van sy kinders en een van sy dogter het al my 3 kinders klas gegee. En dit was die ingesteldheid. En dis die boodskap ek vanaand wil oordra aan ons volk wat vanaand teenwoordig is. Die Bybel praat van gaan die hele wêreld in die verkondiging evangelie. by die skool het ons geleer enter to learn, go to serve. Leave to serve. Gaan doen. En daarom met ons 100 mense wat hier is vanaand, ons moet gaan vasstel hoeveel ander Walter-Perries daar buite is. Wat ons nou kan erkenning gee voordat dit te laat is. En voordat ons oor 100 jaar is terugkom en dan erkenning te gee al die name wat Prof ook vir ons gegee het vanaand. My aanbeveling is vanaand, my versoek is, kom ons gee erkenning vir die mense terwyl hulle leef en nie die dag as hulle is dood is nie. Dr. Kats, jy stem saam met my?
Hou sommer die microfoon, maar het is ook groot sterk woorde gebruik en sinne. Die volgende vraag, ek was gewoon nog al die vraag skiep. So, as ons kyk na Stellenbosch, sorry.
As mense online, so jy moet nie maak.
Was the people online as well?
Yes.
Oh. I thought I was just being loud. My apologies. This is one of the intimidating people that we speak. I saw I was looking at you, I was looking at you. But I refuse to be intimidated tonight, afterwards. So, very powerful call to action. We should be going out and we should be doing something. As scientists, as theologians, go out and do something. Hou praat en doen. What does that look like? You mentioned that this means, and I'm not going to give every person an opportunity to talk. If you feel, because our Shadin is looking at me, please don't ask me. But I would like our colleague to expand. What does that look like? What does it look like for Stellenbosch University, who has said everything, the correct things? What does doing the correct thing look like, in your opinion?
Net vir wat het is, net so commercial break. Een van my kinders in die school by Kansas, na aftrede, en hy afgetrede is, sy ouer kom vandag met my sê, meneer, my kind is vandag siek geraak, en sy is dokter doen. En die dokter het gediagnoseer dat sy COVID. Ja, koud water in die gezicht, omdat die moenie vir my sê, dat is weer iets soos dit op nie. Wat dan beteken het? Ons gaan weer vir dit in 'n fase gaan. Wat was die vraag geweest? Wat moet ons doen? Ek is van mening dat die belangrike ding vir ons om te doen is van die universiteit se kant af baie navorsing word gedoen. Basis elke student wat sy meestersgraad voltooi, wat sy doktorale studies voltooi, uit hoeveel mense gehad om sy data te versamel. Wanneer gaan daar die inligting terug en word toegepas dit wat ons gekry het om het saam te stel. Pragtige boek wat op die rakke van die bibliotheek gesit. Pragtige boek. Pragtige thesis. Maar wanneer word dit goed geïmplementeer? Dis my groot uitdaging. Wanneer ek sê van terug is, sê ek basis, as ek van mening as ek inligting gekry het, dan ek hierdie inligting gaan oordra aan mense wat deelgeneem het aan my oefening, om seker te maak dat dit die regte mense het. Kom ons vanavond hierheen, ek wil graag hier weggaan met die boodskap. Ek wil graag hierdie boodskap gaan implementeer. Wat sou die Perry gesê het, as ek vanavond hier was? Die Perry sou gesê het, gaan en verkondig, en sê vir mense, dan moet 'n verhouding wees tussen jou wetenskap en jou wiskunde. En ek dink daar is een van my rolmodelle is Martin Luther King Jr. Wat bestaan met 'n pragtige aanhaling. Ek dink ek het hom saamgevat. Hy het 'n pragtige aanhaling en ek dink dit van die laaste keer. Hy sê onder andere, science investigates, religion interprets, science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religious gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. The two are not rivals, but they are complementary.
Somebody's mics are on. Oh, no, it's not mine.
mekaar stoot as
So by universiteit met 'n mens moet ons verskil, nie? En dan maak jy agterna op. Dis mos die idee, so jy gaan 'n bietjie verskil. Ek wil die vooronderstelling neem dat mens kan nie doen as jy beraam is in 'n spesifieke manier. Jy moet die raam breek. En om die raam te breek, kos dit anders dink. En om die twee goed by mekaar te bring, die wiskunde en die teologie, moet ons die vraag vra. So wat is die vraag? Ek sou sê, I would say the question is this. If science depended on the God of certainty, which was no God at all, it was the God of domination, how does the God of theology, the God of beauty, interrupt the God of certainty? To teach the God of certainty how to behave in the world, how science ought to behave in the world. Because science has an unruly behavior for the last 300 years. And if we don't stop that behavior, we are all going to go off the cliff. That is where the theology of science will come. So I want to say, having said that, no one is good. I want to put the theologians in the faculty of science. And I wanted to start each meeting in the Department of Botany, Department of Zoology, with a prayer, right? And a theological question about how their scientific enterprise looks from a theological perspective.
So can I just add before we go to anybody else? So I have to say something as a dean of science, obviously. Because I see some of my colleagues from the science faculty are looking at me very strangely and very sadly. With a big mourning silence very soon. Are you talking about science or a parascience, or what people labeled as a science because of that separation, where it has now become a sin and unaccepted to say, I believe in something higher, and if I believe in something higher, I'm not a world-class scientist. Is that still science, or is that a reframing of science? Is that a parascience?
Yeah, so it's not a conflation, and it's not a throwing away of science. It's not a confusion between the spirit and science. That is not what I'm proposing. Science has got to retain its rigorous scientific method, a method of verification, a method of research. You've got to do the experiment, you've got to get the results, you've got to let the results up. What is the prior question? To entering into the experiment that you are going to do. Why are you doing that experiment? In order to advance algorithmic reasoning, if you understand John Altman, the person who invented Gen AI, they have no conscience of how human beings are affected. They are taking the race to the bottom to algorithmatize our entire life. Now that is the worst form of science. I'm not arguing for a kind of spiritual state of parascience. I'm arguing for asking the right question for social science in relation to human existence in the complexity that we're in.
What you're saying is, what I understand is saying, when we do science, we should be doing it exactly the point that we should be going to the communities. What is the benefit of our science? How do we involve the communities? How do we answer specific questions for the better of humanity?
How do we enhance life, not destroy it?
I guess it boils down to a little bit of approaching our disciplines with a little bit of humility. I think that's the one thing. And I think it's obvious for many of us. I think it's important to emphasize nonetheless. I think we've got a country where certainty is always problematic. Soos iemand wat baie seker is van homself, you approach people like that with a healthy sense of suspicion, right? And for good reason. In this building, I think, I want to echo Desmond Tutu that God must have a great sense of humor, because it's, in the same building where you have theologians who are instrumental in creating apartheid theologies, and it's the same building where you find liberation and black theologies emerging, which I find interesting. I think at the end of the day, just to take a step back, the type of questions that we as theologians grapple with, especially when you talk about treating people with dignity and respect. And for us, the starting point is, of course, the idea that you and I irrespective of our background or whatever, are created in the likeness of God. Now, of course, that's something that we often say, but I think if you take that seriously, then you don't have the issues around, theologies that separate, and also the certainty that goes with those types of theologies, which is always problematic, right? Whichever way you look at it. And I think, that humility and that, openness to being proven wrong, that's why I think, the scientists are important in keeping us honest as theologians and vice versa. So I think that's important.
Can let us move on to the next question, and then we can take some comments on this side. So I'm hearing here, and I think it links up with another question that I've been grappling with. So we heard tonight, if you look at Stellenbosch as an example. First time I came to Stellenbosch, I've been in Stellenbosch for a year. I went home and I told my wife, it's very evident, as you move from that side, and you move this way, you can see where various groups have lived, where various groups are living. So that fragmentation that we see is still very evident here. But if you look at South Africa, it just had 49 people, 49 refugees that has gone to the US. South Africa is fragmented. Just gone through a pandemic where before the pandemic, the trust of communities has been the lowest ever in history in what scientists and theologians and university staff are saying. Then we had the pandemic. I guarantee you it's even lower. So we live in a society, when they look at universities, they see an institution that does nothing to stop the fragmentation, has nothing to build that trust in this body, in this institution. How do we change that? Maybe our three colleagues have been very quiet as well. How do we change that? So how do we build a trust? And how do we help minimize, I won't even say fix that fragmentation, minimize that fragmentation?
I think also to latch onto the conversation is it also depends on what we model as a university. In a fragmented context, it doesn't help that we portray a fake unity. So I think that the best thing we could do to regain trust is to have healthy disagreements. And because my metaphor for theology and science, for example, is that of a bridge. A bridge looks static, but if you look inside a bridge, I built roads and bridges for 3 years, so I know very well what's in there, is rebar, metal, and concrete. And the only reason that that bridge does not fall is that the concrete is very good at handling compression, and the rebar, the metal, is good at holding the tension. And so in a bridge, there's compression and tension. It's not static. And in that sense, I think theology and science should be like a bridge that has disagreements. It's a stable system, but each fulfills its special role that it has and the things that it can contribute. So instead of portraying a unity that's not really there, we should be explicit about our strengths, but also in our weaknesses. And in that regard, I think it would be healthy to also challenge each other. I mean, a challenge from science to theology could be very interesting, and vice versa as well.
And I think we all agree, but this type of thing just does not happen. That makes you tonight so unique. How often do you get scientists and theologians having this discussion? So
Yep.
you
One more point. I just want to say that I think it's so wonderful here, and I think the atmosphere comes from Walter Perry, because what often happens is that you get science versus theology. But hang on a second. Let's ask which scientist against which theologians. Or let's take a very specific scientist and investigate his work, and maybe there is a theologian out there who would find that very interesting and worthwhile to investigate. So there's that aspect as well, that let's get a little bit away from the generalizations that polarize us. Let's get into specifics. Let's investigate a specific problem. For example, one problem in science would be, how do you determine the location of an atom, right? You need a specific skill set to do that. another problem in theology could be, how do I know that God loves me, right? But let's get to different problems like, how do we create a better world for our children? Now here we need to leverage more than one discipline. We need science, we need theology, we need things that draw us together to create the better world that we need. And this is a very new problem for me because my daughter is only 14 months old. But so for 14 months now, I'm extremely invested in this.
Alex, anything to add, or can we go?
I would love to
Please.
add. Okay. I don't think I introduced myself
No, you
correctly. Didn't know. I'm Shireen Mentor, Dr. Mentor from the Department of Physiological Sciences. And I do have something to add. I think with respect to schools of different schools of thought like theology and science, it seems at first glance as though they are antagonistic. Okay, but I think what needs to happen in order for these two worlds to have a united front is to approach very important questions with humility, firstly, and then with curiosity. Okay, and the three questions I think that are so important to impacting a society are: one, what is life? As my other colleagues have mentioned, what is life? But from a scientific perspective, what is life? And from a theologian's perspective, what is life? Secondly, what is suffering? From a scientific perspective or physiologically scientific perspective versus a theologian's perspective. And then thirdly, what does it mean to live well from a scientific perspective and from a theologian's perspective? And then the two schools of thought need to come together and understand that science answers the how things happen and theology answers why things happen and gives meaning to life and why that happens. And if we can embrace those two things, we can somehow start to tackle social impact from that stance, I would say.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm feeling very uncomfortable that we're skinnering about the community with the community here. So I'm going to give the community time to ask one or two questions, because we can say all the what sounds really, really, really good. But as my friend said, if we leave from here tonight and we do not know what that going out means, what would Walter Perry have said, what would he have done, then this means nothing. So I'm going to take one or two questions from the floor because I'm tired of skinnering of the people that we're talking about.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Mike Fraser. I live in Peniel, but I'm originally from East London in the Eastern Cape. Let's start at the beginning. Before I start, I've got a serious issue with institutions of higher education and especially universities. And I'll come back to that. But let's start at the beginning. Leveraging science and theology for social justice and societal impact. I've never heard a theologian preach about creation, Genesis 1, in all my adult life. And I've never heard a scientist explain creation because it seems inexplicable.
When can we go for coffee?
Anytime.
I would love to have that conversation with you. Sorry, go ahead.
And the story of creation fascinates me because there is structure, there is order, and there is progression. You know, on the first day, light was created. So before we can create anything, we need to create light, right? And then it goes on and on and on. And it was done in steps, daily steps. But most importantly, after our Creator saw that this was good, and then in Genesis 1 verse 26, he says, let us create mankind in our image and our likeness. Can we ever comprehend what it means to be created in the image and the likeness of God? Because throughout our lives in South Africa, there has been misrepresentation, mischaracterization, and with it goes exceptionalism. And our whole political system, the social injustice that has been created, for lack of a better word, comes from misrepresentation and mischaracterization of people like Walter Perry, people like us. I come through that. And so my issue with institutions of higher learning, if we want to uncover the other Walter Perrys out in our communities, let our universities go to our schools and our communities and let them go and search for them and help them to become the people that are created in the image and likeness of God, because they are out there. Why do our universities wait for our students to pass matric and then they must do, what is that extra year? That a bridging course. If our universities went to our schools, send their students to go and teach mathematics and science at, say, grade 8 level, and guide those pupils to become the people that they were created to be. That is what we need to do.
So, okay, is part of the problem that, and I'm going to speak specifically about Stellenbosch University. We're doing really good things, and I'm here for a year. We're doing really good things at Stellenbosch University. Are we not sending out that message enough? Are we sending it to the wrong places? I'm listening to you, sir, and on Saturday, I was here at 8 on campus because I welcomed 250 grade 12 students who came here to be exposed for an entire day to chemistry and what that chemistry means. And we agreed it's too late. So we're looking now, how do we roll it out earlier to schools? I'm almost getting the sense from what I'm hearing that we are not, and I'm going to use brag very wide, as a very wide, we're not taking those messages out of the work that we're doing. My faculty was first iteration of the science faculty, 1874. I'm the first dean of color in that faculty. It's never been mentioned anywhere. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have, so we just don't have it. So just the microphone.
There's research that was done in America that I read up on many years ago, 2010, I think, 2010, 2011. And it says that about 51% of all first-year university students either fail or they drop out. Are we asking the question why?
In South Africa, the equivalent first-year dropout rate is normally about 35, 40%, and universities are concerned about that. And in my opinion, not for the correct reason. Not always because we care about the student, but because it affects the bottom line. And that links with what is happening over here. The discussion that we're having here. How do we make this about the communities and about those kids? We had a question on this side. And then we'll take one more, and then we'll come back to the panel.
Just speak. Yes, Ivan here. I'm not going to go into who and what and MM, so that's probably irrelevant. My relevancy is how are we going to use, like you guys have discussed this, how are we going to use to address the young people in our community? Because you guys, most of the people here are very educated and highly educated. How are we going to address the 40% unemployment? How are we going to address the dropouts from school? What is the university really doing? Is there a plan? I'm not going to go into religious discussion because I like inclusivity, so I don't like to pick out and say this one is better. So I'm not going to go there. But my question is my people. How are we going to address people that loves 10 people in a shack? Are we saying, and I've thought about this, I've thought about how am I going to do one day if I'm in a position to actually give bursaries to people? Are we going to equate and say, listen, if you stay 2 or more people, you actually qualify already for a 60%. Or those are the kind of things that goes through your head. Because why? When you have one person sleeping in one room, he's got so much more advantages. You guys are all learned people. Your kids stay in single child in a single room. How are we going to address all those imbalances to make sure that, because I can tell you, crime is linked to unemployment. Crime is linked to kids' inability to actually provide for families. Once they leave school, they are unable to provide for the families. So crime is linked to that. I just listened on my way here to people saying, listen, we have to address the crime in South Africa. The crime will never be addressed because people are hungry. And people are hungry because institutions doesn't look at, they only look at performance on school. They don't look at other statistics to actually influence people's lives.
Sure. We're going to take one last comment question from the floor, and then I'm going to ask our panel members closing thoughts, keeping these comments and these thoughts in mind, please. We had one over here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Joseph. I'm just fascinated by bringing together of two fields that deals with the unseen, the unknown. And I think it's long overdue. And key things that jump to my mind is the words called energy, potential, spirituality, and intelligence. There's no way science can exist within a field where these things are not present and are being studied. And there's no way that religion or spirituality or religion can be addressed without these things. And therefore, I think you have highlighted something that trust levels has dropped. Why did trust levels drop? Because the truth are no longer divine truth anymore. It is truth that are funded by whoever is behind the scientific revelations of whatever the motives are. And I think that is maybe a huge challenge that we are sitting with. So how do we rectify that? Well, is obviously to go back to the fundamentals, isn't it? The fundamentals of divine truth that will set us free. Number one. Number two is understanding that potential is deeper than what we actually can ever imagine possible, because we're talking about a higher supreme creation and a creator that is behind the science, because science is the discovery of how things really work and the intelligence behind that. What I understand about religion is fragmented in different ways of spiritual practices, discovering the being that are responsible for the order that we are seeing. And I think that is what we need to look into more as institutions of education. And therefore, for me, I'm passionate about holistic education and not just intellectual stimulating of minds to remember and regurgitate, giving back whatever institution wants you to give back to appear to be intelligent enough for them.
Thank you. Colleagues, let's get some final thoughts to the panelists, please. If we can incorporate these very deep things we've just heard in your closing thoughts, please. We've unfortunately run out of time. We needed 2 hours.
So I'm a physicist. I know how to contract and
Good.
We know something about it. I just wanted to respond to some of these issues. So I grew up in Stellenbosch. My parents literally lived on the other side of Merriman Avenue. Same with Walter Perry. He taught at Old Lukoff School. And Merriman Avenue was a divide between our community and the university. I mean, that's clear. And I think we're still seeing parts of that fragmentation in our community within Stellenbosch, certain sections of the community. We're doing a lot, but I don't think we are visible enough in what we are doing. I have a bunch of young people who are probably understanding the youngsters in the schools better than I do, who are going out to places like Kakamas to take the word out, spread the word of the value of education, not only physics or science, the value that a university can offer them. So there are things happening.
And one would also argue, but why aren't we seeing this in our schools here in Stellenbosch? So this is the amazing thing that, people like Perry started this dialogue. It started to bring communities together to work on a solution. And I don't think that solution is us as academics, telling you what you should know. We should actually go back to the community, and we are part of that community, to find out how we could, work on mutually on finding common solutions. We often think we know what the problem is, and sometimes we are sometimes even misunderstanding what is actually needed by those communities, by the communities. So we need to get together and really create these environments where we could not only have the dialogue, but really, as one of the colleagues said, get things done and show what we are doing. And just one more point.
You're not contracting.
No, so I look across the audience. I'm seeing a certain generation of people, and those are not the people that we need to necessarily touch in order to really push towards a successful and a positive future. I think many of them are probably studying for exams, but I think we need to also make sure that we have them in these conversations, because I think we're missing part of the solution if we're not including them. Thank you.
I'm not walking you to your car later tonight. I will show you where he's parked tonight. He just called all of you old.
Hi. So just reflecting on everyone's comments, I think, when we start to tackle, I suppose, social justice in the community, we have to look at the human body as it is. And I'm going to speak from a physiological perspective now. If we look at social justice for a physiological being, which is all of us, really, we're looking at the human biology, which has universal potential, but there are factors that affect universal potential of the human body, okay? And these factors are the environments that we find ourselves in and that we grow up in, the way we are socialized in those environments, the kind of access we have or don't have access to within those particular environments. Nutrition, if we can't afford proper nutrition, that affects our physiological and psychological aptitude, and the access to education, good education, okay, ultimately affects the way we develop as human beings. And so I think in order for us to rectify those things, we need to make sure that our children are or young adults, or that we create environments that are nurturing and that are safe for children, to dismantle the barrier between social groups, to make sure that resources and access is shared across social groups, to ensure that that we are sustained nutritionally, and to ensure that there's psychological and spiritual support for our learners and our children. And so I think those things are important. And I think one of the things that we try to do as the Department of Physiological Science is that we know that, for example, the Luke of High School, we work with the Luke of High School, and we take the labs to the schools. We teach the students and we expose the students to the scientific method, what it means to prepare and design an experiment, and observe and look at facts and understand the worth of that particular findings, etc. We've done that since 2018, and from that program, that outreach program, we have now 2 master's students from the Luke of High School, and so we're already seeing the impact. One of the other things that we plan to do is open up our doors to schools that can come in and see what an academic research environment looks like, and how we answer very important questions that impact society. I mean, in my field, for example, I study the effects of drug abuse and viruses on the brain's protective barrier, and that is to shed light on the detrimental effects of things like your environment and the way you are socialized, and drug abuse that's so rife in our Cape Flats communities and townships, how that affects development. And so that is how we make an impact in physiology. And I think that's just my comments.
Colleagues, we have 5 minutes. Closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think my closing thoughts would just be to realize that we are on a shared quest for intelligibility, and that we need each other and our resources. And perhaps also in terms of our community, let's try and run in the university's doors, because I'm not sure how many community leaders have gone to the Faculty of Business Science and say, hey, come do a case study with our community. Do a literature review on what resources do we have, what capabilities are there to help us with our unemployment and things like that. So in that sense, perhaps it's also on us as community leaders, and now I'm putting on my hat as a pastor, to actually go and look for the resources that we need, because they are there and they are excellent.
Ja, die Here het die waarheid lief. I'm just thinking
Kom weer pastoor ook.
Yeah. We should also be careful and not to be too romantic about universities. You know, universities are slow. Baie soos 'n kerk, right? You know how it goes. So one needs to be realistic as well in terms of, I think we should be held accountable without a doubt. But at the same time, I think we should also be, more strategic. In what we do nowadays, there's a lot of talk about interdisciplinary research, and I think or interdisciplinary work, and this is a good example of that. But at the same time, there's also, I think, an increasing emphasis on transdisciplinary work, right? So not just academic disciplines, but also what we've got to offer, outside of the university, which I think is crucial. We've had a comment about creation. I think, for us as theologians, you never speak about creation without without we don't speak about creation without speaking about redemption, which I think also speaks to the social aspects that needs to be addressed. And that's why many of us are quite serious about the liberatory aspects of Christian theology and theology in general. We've got a long history in South Africa where we've seen, the ill effects of bad theology, but at the same time, we've seen the potential and, liberation theologies and how that contributed to, what we have in South Africa today. So I think we need to be balanced, but again, we also need to be honest, not just in terms of what we say, but also with ourselves in terms of the potential of not just the university, but also, what these disciplines have to offer, as a whole, and not be too, to be idealistic and have unrealistic expectations of what we are able to do as academics and as universities.
And as schools and as teachers. The question that I have, leading off from you and leading off from you, is so how do we teach for this critical redemptive capacity, the holistic educational capacity, and so on? It's a big question, because I think young people are teaching themselves outside ethical frames. They have their own frames. How do you enter pedagogically as teachers into their frames? Let their frames live. Let their frames be capacitated. It's got to come from them. I think what religious languages, ethical languages have to offer is a literacy that in a sense engages certainty, but not as certainty that takes you down a kind of a particular worldview that's going to destroy. But it infuses that certainty with a kind of, I don't know if there's a better word at this moment, an aesthetical capacity. The ability to understand that when you walk in the world, you have certain deep choices to make. And those choices depends on how you have engaged your literacies and your world so that you don't make bad choices. So for me, it's a kind of an aesthetics education. That is where we are at the moment. That's all we have to offer young people at the moment. Right? This rational education is passing the CAPS curriculum in schools. Many of you are teachers. That's not going to, it might not even get them a job, because it doesn't give them the creative, critical capacity to make good choices.
Ek het laaste spreker seker, né? Ek beskou vir Walter Perry as 'n kritiese denker. En ek dink dit wat ons probeer vanaand bereik. Ek moet net gou seker maak dat ons almal betrokke maak by die besigheid. Ek gaan gou 'n sommetjie vir u gee en dan moet u Dr. Daniels, dan moet u vir my net gou die antwoord gee. Aan die einde. Ek gaan vir sê wat is die antwoord.
Maar hy's niks wiskunde mense nie.
Oh, sorry. Ag,
Daar standaardgraad wiskunde so.
nee, dan gaan die oefening nie help nie.
Dan gaan dit nie werk nie.
Ag nee, dan is ek klaar gepraat. Dankie. Ja. Okay, ten laaste. Ja, ten laaste. Die belangrike opmerking wat ek graag vanaand wil maak is dat hierdie tipe van gesprekke is baie belangrik vir ons. En ek dink Ivan het dit aangeraak. Is dat wanneer ons normaalweg hierdie tipe van gesprek het, baie keer bereik ons nie die man op die grond nie. En dis die groot uitdaging. Iemand het 'n bietjie vroeër gepraat van die kerk en dis presies dieselfde. Die mense wat die graag in die kerk wil hê wat dit moet hoor. Hulle kom nie kerk toe nie. Nou ek sluit gou af met die volgende. Nou moet u saam met my iemand nou hoor wat ek sê en dan u moet sê amen. In die Bybel leer vir ons in Psalm 33 vers 1, die Here is my herder. Amen. Nee. Gaan weer probeer. Die Bybel sê vir ons in Psalm 33 vers 1, die Here is my herder. Amen. Johannes 3 vers 17 sê, want so lief het God die wêreld gehad. Amen. En dan kom Jesaja 1 vers 8 sê, Jesaja 1 vers 8 sê, want nou ken ek ten dele en eendag sal ek ten dele ken. Amen. As nie waar nie?
Nou weet ons wie gaan die kerk toe nie.
Okay, nou weet ons wie die kerk toe gaan nie. Vriende, baie dankie van my kant af dat u geluister het na ons vanaand, ons bydraes. En ek wil tog vir u vra, moenie dat die gesprek hier eindig nie. Dis 'n interessante gesprek en ek wil net 'n versoek rig. Ons het 'n begin gemaak met die wetenskap en die teologie. Belangrike rolspeler hier, sou ek graag wil bygevoeg het, is die politieke wetenskappe. Dat ons ook hulle standpunt kon gekry het. Want dis die mense wat al die goed die mekaar krap. Hulle maak die kerke toe, hulle maak die hospitale toe, maar hulle moet ook hier gewees het. Baie dankie voorstel.
Amen. Colleagues, we've run out of time. Let me just make a. Can we take this afterwards? Or is it burning urgent? Please.
We're hoping that the deans of faculties and whatever would take it forward and put the pressure where pressure needs to be.
Okay.
Now, we've heard it earlier today, and we've heard it now again. Various speakers here from the community side. I regard Sheridan also from the community. Talk about that we don't always get to see the work that the university does in our communities.
Sure.
And we have asked the leadership of the university, please, can we get from the faculty side, for all the faculties of this university, can we get a plan? Can it be discussed with the community? Can it be agreed upon? And can the rollout then happen? Because what we've also found, and this is a serious complaint from the community, the university comes in. It starts projects in the communities, in the schools, in many cases, and then all of a sudden it disappears for various reasons, funding or whatever. And this is the feedback is not coming back to the community. Why things are collapsing?
Okay.
So what do we want the deans of faculties to do? Is to have a serious discussion about the caliber of the interaction with the community, because that will bring greater results all around for the community and for the university. Thank you very much.
So can I add something to that? That should not even be a negotiable. If you look at the national ethics rules that dictate how research must be done, feedback needs to be given back to the community where the research was done. If it's medical research, it needs to flow back. That's something I think that Regina will raise. So thank you for that input. I think it's very, very important. It's a non-negotiable. It's not something that we choose we want to do or not do as researchers. We have to do it. I was going to have what I thought would be a very controversial last word, and then he touched on it, unfortunately. So maybe it's not that controversial anymore. I look at the audience as well, And I am not convinced, even though these are very important conversations, this is a very important celebration. Are we still discussing things that are important to the new generation? I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to tell you why I'm saying that. So I'm in our FASTAC meeting, which is our transformation committee, where I sit as the dean. And we're discussing the renaming of the buildings. And two of our young researchers look at us and say, hang on, why are we having this discussion? We don't understand anymore. They say, these two buildings and these names is nothing but an address for us now. So I spoke to the then rector, Wim, and I spoke to Teresh, and I said, the things that we're fighting as a generation, we must be supporting.
Please, can I have some coding?
Does the new generation think it's important? Or do we need to explain to them why it is important? I'll leave you with that, what I think is very controversial, but hopefully that keeps you up tonight and doesn't allow you to sleep. And can we just have a hand for our panelists, because I think they've been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the panel to remain sitting there.
Je kan niet gepraat, mensen. Sit.
So, throughout the course of this conversation, we had Dominie Simon Adams here, and we are so honored to have you with us tonight. He was asked to listen and to reflect afterwards. And we will give him now the opportunity, Dominie Adams, om bietjie net te reflekteer op wat hy gehoor het. Moet ek 'n bietjie harder praat? Ja. Om net bietjie te reflekteer oor wat hy gehoor het. Maar dan ook bietjie 'n projeksie doen oor wat is die visie vorentoe? What is the kind of vision forward? Ek dink baie het dit gesê, many have said it, Dominie Adams have been really in the communities that we grew up. He's been a figure that have, fought for and led the struggle, for access, for justice. And also in a way, we also want to honor that role that you played in the community. So tonight, maybe 5-10 minutes or so, we want to hear from you in terms of how you heard the dialogue and how we take it further. Good to you.
Thank you. Jy moet my toch verskoon as ek sit asseblief. Laat ek eers sê dat hierdie byeenkoms is vir my een van die historiese gebeure op hierdie dorp. Is jammer dat dit, en ek verstaan nie, as ek hier is myself uitspel, hoekom het tot een seksie van ons dorp beperk is. Maar die toekoms lê nog voor. En daar is vir ons geweldige potensiaal hierin opgesluit. En ek visualiseer dat hieruit groot en belangrike dinge kan voortvloei. Miskien sal dit goed wees, professioneel, as ons kan kyk om, ek weet nie of het al so is nie, of hier 'n gebou is wat al vernoem is na Walter Perry. Daar is so 'n gebou? Nou, baie geluk daarmee. Ek het nog nie daarvan gelees nie, of miskien het ek dit misgelees. Baie dankie daarvoor. Inderdaad het iemand die vraag gevra, hoeveel Walter Perry's is nie nog aan buite nie? En daai Walter Perry's, dink ek, lê nie maar net op ons weg om hulle in te kry nie, maar ook op hierdie gemeenskap se. En daar is baie potensiaal waarvan ek weet wat verlore gegaan het op hierdie dorp. Mense materiaal waarmee gemors is op hierdie dorp. Nie bloot om hulle eie omstandighede of redes nie, maar ook deur 'n bepaalde verwerplike diaboliese stelsel. En is ook die sulkes, dink ek, wat ons ook moontlik kan inkry. Ek wil tog net vra dat hierdie Walter Perry, van wie ons so baie praat, miskien moet daar 'n boeklet uitgebring word rondom hierdie persoon. Ek ken hom nie. Ons kinders ken hom nie. En soveel van hierdie groot en belangrike name gaan verlore. Hulle geskiedenis, dit wat hulle gedoen het, en dit wat hulle nog kon gedoen het, daarvan weet ons, ek weet bitter min daarvan. Miskien is omdat ek te laat op Stellenbosch gekom het. Maar laat ons dink daaraan om iets skrifteliks uit te bring. 'n Boeklet of wat ook al, ten opsigte van hierdie besondere mens, sodat ons nageslag kan lees van, as ek dit so mag noem, ons helde, sodat dit as inspirasie kan dien vir ons jong mense, en dat ons jong mense dan ook daardeur na beter kan strewe. Ek sou wou vra, soos wat iemand ook genoem het hier, dat hierdie gesprek nie vanaand die eindig nie. Dat ons voortbou op hierdie gesprek. Inderdaad, wat vir my baie sterk uitgekom het vanaand. Ons het gekyk na die lewe, en dat daar ten minste 3 dimensies is. 'n verlede, 'n hede en 'n toekoms. En ek wil vra dat ons na die verlede kyk met al sy lelik en met al sy mooi, met dankbaarheid. En wat ons vanaand ervaar het, is een van die goed, waarna ons moet kyk met waardering. En dat ons voortbou daarop. Iemand het gepraat van die moontlikheid van Lukhof en Banhoekweg, waarvan die transportakte verkry sal word, dat teruggegee sal word aan die gemeenskap. Laat ons daarna en na die toekoms kyk met hoop. Mag die Almagtige ons almal ryklik seën. Baie dankie.
Dankie, Dominee Adams. Thank you. Not just for what you shared, but also for who you are, for the sacrifices made, but more importantly, for the moral compass that you've been to a community in a dark time. We want to honor you as well tonight. Now, dear friends, we have come to the end of our evening, but not to the end of, this quest. We've been challenged, and ek is seker daarvan u sal met my saamstem, ons agenda is vir ons uitgelê, en daar is baie werk om te doen. Ek wil oorgee, I want to give over to Dr. Donald Katz, will speak a last word of gratitude on behalf of the family. He was also a former moderator of the Volkskerk, public theologian from this faculty, but also currently, you might know, regular columnist, Burger, and a voice also in our time and for our communities. So we're going to ask Dr. Donald Katz to say a last few words of gratitude. Over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Goeienaand allemaal. I want to start off by saying it is in remembering our past that we find our path to the future. And it is in remembering and in honoring our ordinary people, our heroes and our legends for their lives and for their work, that we find inspiration to continue their contribution to justice, equality, democracy, and human dignity. So dear friends, colleagues, and honored guests, on behalf of the Walter Perry family, I would like to express our deepest appreciation for tonight's gathering, that not only honors the legacy of our beloved Walter Perry, but also uplifts the powerful contribution of community builders across faith tradition who have over decades struggled tirelessly for social justice and equality in South Africa. We are humbled and grateful to the Lukov alumni for accepting the profound responsibility of conceptualizing and implementing this annual lecture in partnership with Stellenbosch University. A special word of thanks to Mr. Stan Amos, Mr. Wilfred Daniels, and Mr. Fatigue Henry for their vision, hard work, and unwavering dedication in conceptualizing this annual lecture and ensuring it is grounded in memory, meaning, and justice. Our heartfelt thanks go to the Center for the Advancement of Social Impact and Transformation for their continued support and guidance in the vital work of memorialization, restitution, and reparation. In particular, we would like to thank Renee Hector Kannemeyer for holding this work with such integrity and commitment, and for securing the funding to implement it. Together with the late Otto van Nooy, whose vision and dedication remain deeply felt. We are equally grateful to the Faculty of Theology at Stellenbosch University for so generously hosting this second memorial lecture and contributing to its success, not just in financial terms, but through your willingness to provide a sacred space for critical reflection, interfaith dialogue, and historical recognition. I think it is most fitting for the second Walter Perry Memorial to be held and to be hosted at this faculty, the Faculty of Theology. Though Walter Perry did not study theology, I think his theology is reflected in his life and in his work. Sincere thanks must also go to Monique Buscom, whose thoughtful design of the Walter Perry installation, along with the invitations and tonight's program, beautifully captured the spirit of this occasion. We also extend our thanks to Marika Brandt and Divine Roberts for their administrative and logistic support in coordinating this event. To the Faculty of Science, and in particular the Department of Physics, thank you for ensuring that Walter Perry's legacy is not only preserved, but accurately and courageously placed within its rightful historical and institutional context. We also acknowledge and thank Professor Reginald for his wise and gracious leadership in this as program director, Ms. Renee Hector Kannemeyer for setting the scene with thoughtfulness and clarity, Professor Bertie Fielding. I hope I pronounce your name correctly, please. Our moderator for guiding tonight, a dialogue with depth and integrity and with a sense of humor. And to our esteemed panelists, Prof. Demain Solomons, Prof. Sean Weingart, Dr. Sheridan Jerome Adonis, Prof. Aslam Fattar, Dr. Shireen Mentor, and Hans Christoph Tapelo Lange. Thank you for your insight, your courage and commitment to transformation through your disciplines and your lived realities. Finally, but not least, Simon Joudoring. Thank you. He is a former moderator of the Volkskerk van Afrika. He is the pillar of strength over many years for not only Stellenbosch community, but wherever he goes, his faith and his strength, for his commitment to justice. And I must say, over the years, when he was much younger and active, he was very much a pain for the local police. So thank you, Simon, for still being with us and for what we can learn from you. We will remember not only your words in preaching, but also your life and work amongst us. This evening affirms that Walter Perry's life and work were not in vain, brothers and sisters. It affirms that memory, when made public and active, has the power to guide our present and transform our future. On behalf of our entire family, thank you for walking this path with us. Ek dank u.
Hey, dankie, Donald Katz. Nou, vriende, friends, we have concluded our time here together. I just want to invite you all. We've got some refreshments outside. Please stay behind and let's interact. Let's share all these moments also with each other, the stories with each other, and also let's continue this quest. I want to ask all the speakers just to stay behind. We want to take some photos, but please spend some time here and have some wonderful refreshments. Thank you.